Absolutely. We have a lot of people on the call who are asking about work-life balance. I don't know if you touched on that, but that's something that seems to be of great interest to people. Maybe one of our students want to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I can say something about that. So I think again, this is another one of those things that's going to be extremely lab dependent. So personally, the lab that I'm in right now, they expect probably about like 40 to 50 hours a week, which is like a normal work schedule. Sometimes you may be in labs where it goes over that. Sometimes I might even have weeks where I need to come in, work a little bit on the weekends, work in the mornings to put in some extra hours, but it's going to fluctuate throughout your time. And yeah, again, I think that is very lab dependent, so it might be a little bit difficult to answer directly.
Um, just to add on to that, I think it's definitely something really important to think about. You have to know going into grad school, like it takes time and you have to be dedicated and like I come in on weekends sometimes, but I enjoy doing that because it's like, doing my experiments to get results. But I think it is important when you're choosing a lab to figure out what sort of lab culture you want. There are definitely labs that are working like constantly around the clock, all through the weekends. So if that's something that, you wouldn't necessarily want to do, that's really important to consider before you join a lab. But ultimately, I think while you're going to have to work hard and you have to be dedicated, if I think it's okay also to have time for yourself as well. And honestly, I think that prevents burnout and is really important. So you should definitely have hobbies and things that you like to do outside of lab as well while you're working hard in lab.
One thing I wanted to add is I think, at least for me, everything's been super flexible. So I'm like a 100% able to set my own hours, which has been like interesting. Like I feel like almost like people aren't really like watching over me as much. I came from in undergrad, I had just finished my honors thesis, so I was working like probably 80 hours a week. I don't even know. But so now I like am coming from a place of like not having a work-life balance issue because I just only worked and then now I'm like trying to build life back in. But it's been like super doable. My lab doesn't work on weekends, although I have been there a couple times. And even though my lab is empty on the weekends, there's always someone in the building. At least on the California campus, we have like 24/7 security. So you can be here whenever you want to, and you will most likely not be alone. There's always someone working.
I'll add on to that just a little bit. These are all great points. Work-life balance in terms of, for me at least, like Paige and Allison and Mindy mentioned, it's very flexible. It's lab dependent. Uh, Luckily for me, it's also cohort dependent. A lot of people in my cohort like to go out. They go out to concerts, or we play volleyball sometimes on weekdays. So we do have a lot of students looking out for each other in a way, like preventing burnout. So we do hang out. We go out for lunch sometimes during the workday. So in a way, our work hours are very flexible, and then you build in a good work-life balance with cohort and friends and lab members. So that's always good to see.
Great, thank you. Another question we're getting a lot is regarding the statement of purpose. And I'm not sure if our current students know, but this year we you may have heard this. We integrated the research statement and the personal statement into a single statement of purpose. So there's not two documents; it's a single document that we're asking. But a lot of students are asking, what should they include? Do you have any tips or advice, or how did you put together, the information that characterized your research experience, as well as, kind of why you wanted to go to graduate school? So I think any advice you could offer our viewers regarding the statement of purpose would be of value. And just real quick, everyone, we do have a page called Written Narratives on our website. It is in the admissions section under how to apply. At the end of the first paragraph, you'll see written narratives page, and that will take you to a page that goes into more detail about what we're looking for on that thing.
I can start off this question. So for me, I was an English minor as well, so I actually really enjoy writing. And so I really enjoyed writing my personal statement. I know it can be hard to write about yourself, but I think it's so important that you use that space to, again, I mentioned in interviews, you should be like showing your personality, but that's really important in your personal statement or your statement of purpose as well. So for me, I emphasized my passion for science. I'm here because I want to be. Like, I absolutely adore science. I always have. And I always knew that I wanted to go into it. So I really emphasized that point. But everybody's individual perspective is going to be different and your story is going to look different, but I think just don't be afraid to share that. Like, obviously, yes, you need to include your research experiences as well and like what you learned from those, and those are really important, but also, why do you want to be here? Like, what makes you like want to go to grad school, and then what makes you want to come here is really important.
Yeah, I think sorry, to add on to that. So yeah, conveying your passion for science is really what's going to set you apart from the other people who are applying to the same program, because we all obviously are qualified. Otherwise, we wouldn't be trying to get a PhD. I think a piece of advice that I received whenever I did this open house last year was something you really want to show when talking about your research is that you have grit. Because of that, when you're going on the process to a PhD, you're going to encounter failures in the laboratory, and you have to be the type of person that can overcome those. So I think for me, the way that I like included that in my personal statement was by talking about previous failures that I had encountered and what I did to overcome those, and then highlighting that the fact that I was passionate about science is why I like worked so hard to overcome those problems. So I think just kind of trying to work in that you have the qualities that would allow you to be a good PhD candidate, and not just that you've like had good grades and did research, but like you have the personal qualities that will help you along the way.
Yeah, I
One
think.
oh,
Sorry, Paige. Go ahead. No worries.
oh, I was just gonna add, I think the writing part actually is the easy part. It's the self-reflection that's the hard part. So I would highly recommend like I don't know if people are into meditation or whatever, but like or take a walk or whatever, but I think it's really important to like without even a piece of paper in front of you or a computer in front of you, like take time to sit by yourself and think about the moments that have guided you in your life to like get you to where you are, because the more that you can like tell a story rather than just state the facts of your life, the more interesting your personal statement will be to read. And I know that's super hard, and especially hard when you're like having a million other things. Like you've got research probably going on right now as an applicant, and you've got like classes maybe going on. But setting aside that time to do that will really make not only your personal statement, like forget your personal statement, but it'll also make your like mind better and like will make you understand yourself better. So highly recommend that. And then also one piece of advice that I got that was really good was to know, I think one of the professors mentioned this earlier too, but to know the inner like workings of Scripps a little bit and see if you can add things like about Scripps that are unique to Scripps into your personal statement. So like for me, I'm kind of a addiction researcher adjacent. And so I knew that the Scripps California campus has the Alcohol Research Center. And so I wrote about that in my personal statement. And I wrote about Caliber, which is our like translational and like the Translational Institute. And like things like that, if you can get information about those places and show demonstrate that you know that Scripps has those and that you're going to take advantage of those opportunities, I think that's important.
That's fantastic. Thank you. A number of people are asking about communicating with faculty members during the application process. I was curious to know if any of you had reached out to faculty whose work you were interested in, kind of as you were applying, or even before that. And so if you came into the process knowing I like X, Y, and Z, I like what the research they were doing, and so I'm going to communicate with them beforehand and see if they were taking students and so forth. Or if it was not until you went through the interview process, the interview weekend, that you started communicating with faculty.
I can go first. So in terms of, like I said before too, I didn't reach out to faculty beforehand, before my interview weekend. Uh, Actually, the people I met during the interview weekend were the two PIs that I ended up rotating with and joining their labs. And to me, I think that was probably better, because if I were to reach out to them beforehand, I would come off as, both sides, I would come off as a stranger. I would be a stranger to them. I would not know about their research interests as much. They would not know about my background. So meeting them during the interview weekend, like I mentioned, at a poster session is where I met my current PI. Learning about the research, learning how enthusiastic about the research they were, because they were presenting a poster and I could see that, like this person knows their stuff and he's actually interested in performing this research. So that's what motivated me to send in that email after interview weekend. I was like, hey, I really enjoyed talking to you. Can I potentially look into a rotation with you? Within 5 minutes, a response is like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So in terms of that, I think I reached out to my PIs after the interview weekend.
Yeah, I mentioned previously, I didn't really like meet with anyone before coming to interview, but I did send some emails just to kind of express some interest and say like, hey, this is sort of my background. I'd love to maybe meet with you at the interview. Actually, none of the people that I interviewed with or had identified as faculty of interest to me ended up being the people that I rotated with. So I wouldn't put like too much pressure on yourself to say like, oh, I have to have this figured out at this stage in the process. I met the PI of my first rotation. I met him at a poster session during the interview, but he had not even been on my radar on the campus. I just decided I really liked his research, decided to do a first rotation. My second rotation, I didn't meet him at the interview or even know about him before coming to Scripps. But he gave a lightning talk. So they're like little short presentations that faculty members who are wanting to take rotation students will kind of give. And I really enjoyed the lightning talk. And so I ended up doing a rotation with him. So yeah, I think it's probably important to like know who you want to work with and definitely reach out and make those connections, but don't like freak out about it and think that if you don't figure it out before the interview that you like won't do well, because you will.
Fellowships. Does anyone have, there's a number of questions about fellowships and financial support. So I was curious if any of our current students here have external fellowships or if you've applied for fellowships.
So I don't have a fellowship, but I have applied now to GRFP twice. I just submitted my application. So when I was here for the surf program, they encouraged me to apply for the GRFP fellowship. And it was a lot of work, and at the time I really didn't want to do it, but I'm glad that I did actually. Um, because it was really helpful to do the fellowship, and I guess now the deadline has passed. But I think that applying for fellowships, it is stressful, it's a lot, but it's really helpful. First of all, it's helpful if you receive a fellowship. And Scripps has a stipend supplementary for external fellowships. So if you receive a fellowship like the NSF GRFP, then that's it's over 50% of your salary, then they'll supplement $10,000 to your stipend, which is incredible. I've not heard of any other programs doing that. Um, but yeah, it's also really great practice for writing like proposals and grants, which we'll have to do if you stay in academia a lot in the future. So I have applied for it twice, but I won't find out about it this year until um like April.
I just wanted to add, yeah, I definitely want to echo that. I think there's definitely no reason not to apply for fellowships. It's great experience, writing experience. I know, yeah, like you said, the deadline has already passed for people that aren't like, yeah, aren't in grad school yet. But as a first year grad student, I know a lot of people want to like wait until their second year to do it, and I think that's totally fine too. Like for GRFP specifically, you can apply as a first year or a second year grad student, but also not both. I applied to this cycle, and it really helped me learn about my project. I had to set aside a lot of time to like write it, and like I feel like I didn't make a ton of like tangible research project but progress, but like mentally I really understand what I'm doing now in a way that I probably wouldn't have if I hadn't gone through the writing process with my advisor. And then I also wanted to add that Scripps has internal fellowships that you don't apply for. And so I think the like office of philanthropy, or like whoever in the grad office like just decides to like give fellowships to people. I recently got notified that I got the Mark Pearson endowed fellowship, so I will have stipend funding for the next 3 years, which is fantastic. Great surprise. So there's things like that too. Yeah.
Yeah, so just to include to Paige's point, yeah, we do have some additional awards sometimes given to students and the incoming cohort based on application and admissions performance, and we do have internally fellowships such as the SCAC fellowship in California at UF Scripps. We also have an internal one which students do apply for. So once a year, an application will go out for that. So definitely a lot of internal opportunities, but of course, we encourage students to look out external fellowships as well.
Yeah, there have been questions about international fellowships as well, and that's something you can look up. Many countries and many governments and many organizations around the world will offer fellowships for new graduate students that you can bring with you to your institution. I know, like Canada has the NSERC program, and we've had students come with fellowships from um, Japan and Singapore and other places like that. So it's just a matter of looking and seeing what's available out there. There's a lot more than you probably thought there was, and certainly that's something that if you come in with a fellowship that's already under your belt, that's certainly not going to hurt. But it's not required, of course. And our philanthropy office has been working very hard to raise money to meet our president's goal, the president of Scripps Research, of having all graduate students eventually funded through fellowships. That is a goal of the Institute. Currently, I think that the internal SCAGS fellowships are up to about 40. So we're making our way toward more and more students having fellowship funding.
One
Let's
thing I
see.
want to say, Jeremy. Sorry,
I'm sorry.
I'm going to
Go ahead.
dial off. I'm going to dial off right now, but I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to connect with prospective students, and I wanted to wish them a good luck as well. Thank you, Paige, Allison, and Mindy for chatting as well. But thank you so much.
Thanks for your time. Some
Indeed.
students have asked about the first year and what the balance is, speaking of balance, in terms of like coursework versus research. So during your first year, how much of your time is spent in your courses versus how much is spent versus research, and how does that change over time?
Someone mentioned this earlier, but the grad program is super flexible. So you don't have like a set number of classes that you have to take at any given time, but you do like eventually have to have taken 6 courses. So I think most people, at least here that I've talked to, took 2 courses the first quarter as a grad student. So that's what I'm in, and then we have like a 1 hour or 1 credit hour ethics course as well. So I yeah, so I'm in 2 classes, and I think I mentioned it's every day for me, an hour and a half every day, and then the rest of my time is spent in lab. Um, and I think that like setup gives me a lot of flexibility to get enough done while also like learning, and classes are a great opportunity to meet other people too, so it's nice to have that as a first year specifically.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say it's definitely flexible. You can kind of figure out how many classes you want to be taking at one time. Don't want to obviously overwork yourself. I think I remember, this might be wrong, so correct me if that's wrong, but I remember our dean Laura Solt saying during orientation that you're expected to spend at least 50% of your time doing lab work as a first year. And so I think that's like the baseline, but I think most people end up doing a lot more than that. Like I know the majority of my time here is definitely spent on research, and then I just have some classes that I'm doing as well. So.
I think you're on mute, Jeremy.
Old school problem. Um, One last question, since we're kind of almost at time here, is I'd be surprised how many times I've gotten this question in here, is why did you go for a PhD? Why are you pursuing a doctoral degree in graduate school? Kind of what do you hope to get out of it? What was your motivation?
I can start us off, but I feel like my answer is is not the norm. But I just always knew, like, I know that's not a great answer, but I always knew that I wanted to be in science. And when I was in like third grade, I looked up what I would need to do that, and it said PhD, and I was like, okay, like that's what we're doing. So just like all throughout high school, that was just always the plan. Um, and now I'm so excited to finally be here. But I mentioned earlier, my overall goal is to have my own lab in academia. And I knew that you needed a PhD to do that. So I sort of just always knew, but I know that's not a great answer.
I think that is a great answer, Mindy. For me, I think it's really just the fact that I love learning, and I feel like I'll never be satisfied until I am like an expert in one specific area, and that's really what a PhD is you become like you just get to keep answering questions like continuously, and I think that's really what I talked about mainly in my like personal statement whenever I was writing was just how much I love asking and answering questions, and I just like never want to stop. And so staying in school, I feel like is really the only way to do that. And so when you're in a PhD program, you're learning every single day. And like I've already learned so much here. And I know like I'm going to continue to do that, even though if it's just in like one specific field. I think it's really exciting to be like the absolute expert on one certain area. So
I don't know if this is atypical or typical, but I basically went into undergrad like not knowing what I was doing, just knowing that I liked like science and biology and psychology type of stuff. And I was a neuroscience major in undergrad, so I continued that in grad school specifically. But I I kind of did all of my pre-med requisites, like all the way up until the end, until I didn't take the MCAT, but I did course-wise everything I needed to like go to med school too, just in case. I wanted to like cover my bases in case I wanted to do that at the last minute, but I knew that wasn't right for me, so I was looking for a different um opportunity. And I think like Ali said, the opportunity to like really obsess about something is just like super fun, like to know everything you can about one thing and like spend all of your time doing that one thing is super exciting to me. And then um like Mindy said, I definitely value mentoring other people and potentially one day having my own lab. So I think PhD is the route for that for sure.
That's wonderful. I lied. We have one more question. Sorry. There have been a lot of questions about the two different campuses, and maybe want to have Shannon and Paolo address this one real quickly about how you apply to different campuses. Should you apply to both, just one, and how that works? So.
Yeah, I can take this one. So yeah, this question came up a lot. Students were asking, do you apply to one or the other campus, or what is it okay to be interested in just one campus only, and how does all of that work? So the way that this happens is when you are filling out your application, you will not, you're not necessarily selecting one campus or the other. The way that you'll indicate your interest in a particular or both campuses is by the faculty you select in your application. So you'll be asked to select faculty that you're interested in. You can choose all faculty from, say, California, for example, or all from Florida, or you can mix the two and you can choose faculty from both campuses. If you choose all from one, your application will only be reviewed and considered for that one campus. If you then choose faculty from both committees will review your application, and then the committees will decide, do we think this person is a good fit for one campus or the other, or maybe both? And so a lot of times if a student is deemed to be a good fit for both campuses, you would get an invitation letting you know that you have been selected for both campuses and you can choose to interview on one or the other. So at this point, that would be up to you to make that selection. You could say you prefer Florida or you prefer California, but unfortunately you can't interview with both. So at that time, that's where that decision is made. So hopefully that clears things up.
And just to add to that, essentially, yeah, once you accept that offer to interview at one campus, you're essentially only being considered and will only enroll at that campus. So, you know, you can rotate, of course, within the campus, within different labs, but you cannot do that across from campus. So just something to keep in mind. And to add to that, same thing in the application process when it comes to the SCAGS Oxford dual program versus the PhD program. If you want to be considered for the dual program, you select that option on the front end, and then you're essentially considered for both programs, the traditional and the SCAGS Oxford. So in the case that you're not considered or interviewed for the SCAGS Oxford program, that does not limit your chances of being considered for the standard PhD program at Scripps. So.
Great. Thank you for adding that in, because we've gotten some questions about that also. Yeah. I know we didn't get to all the questions in the stream, but we also have a page on our website in the admissions section of FAQs, so you can find more answers to your questions there. You can also email us. And do any of our other panelists have any other things they want to address or say? No? Did we miss anything?
Wanted to say, I don't know if this goes for everyone, but definitely like feel free to reach out to anyone at any time, including myself. I don't know if you guys have access to our emails or not, but I think most people are very happy to answer any questions that weren't addressed here.
Yes, you can feel free to email the admissions office, admissions@scripps.edu, if you'd like to be put in touch with any of the students, and we can share their contact information.
Perfect. That's great. All right. Well, thank you all for your time. Thank you to our attendees for being a part of this, and we look forward to hearing from all of you and seeing your applications. Thank you.
Their weekend.
Thank you. Bye.